Unitree in Shanghai, they've just listed. They are 5,526 times subscribed by retail buyers. So retail investors are placed. That number, 5,526 times more buy orders than are available. I don't know how that works in real money. I'm assuming lots of very, very disappointed people. It's valued at 9 billion. This is a big thing. I mean, I guess the first question is, what is it? And then if there is a European angle, how do we bring it back to how what they're doing for humanoid robotics is going to affect us over here?
Well, we do a lot of physical AI. I have to think it's the most important trend over the coming decade is what are we going to do in the real world with all of this? And there's a big kind of strand, a big vector of thinking that says, look, humanoids are going to be important. It's what Elon Musk says with his Optimus over at Tesla. Unitree is the company that has been really most evocative for everybody because they've been showing us these kung fu performing robots, right? We see coming out of the Chinese showcase events, and they're formidable. I mean, it's incredible. The flips, the things they can do, and it's just
it
you look
feels
at it
only 10 minutes ago looking at Boston. Oh, Jesus,
Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics. Thank you, and everybody saying only a few years ago, this is probably the pinnacle for a while. They can't do almost like human movements, and then bring in the Chinese, and they are, like you're saying, backflipping and kung fuing across the stage, and it just looks like almost like a human movement. It's quite crazy.
It's really interesting. I think one of the arguments we have made is that look, so much of what physical AI is going to be about putting intelligence into the world. And if you have a forklift, it makes no sense to buy an old-fashioned forklift and then buy a robot to drive the forklift. Like, why would you do that? You're just going to put the intelligence into the forklift. And there are so many situations like that where there's really no need for a humanoid robot. You just put the intelligence as embodied intelligence straight into whatever it is you want to have be intelligent. And so how do you go about figuring out, whether you should have a humanoid robot or not? Well, that really depends on the environment the robot works in. And in most business environments, you are not tied to a humanoid form factor. If I have a warehouse, there's nothing that says that warehouses should be built for humans. They can be built for autonomous forklifts. There's nothing that says that a factory should be built for humans. That can be built for other types of autonomous machines. But there are certain places that have to be built for humans. And those are the places where we live, where we study. It's our homes, hospitals. It's places that are made for humans. And there, humanoids could become important. But I also think they're probably the trickiest places because the only way humanoid robots become valuable there is if they can coexist with humans. And I don't think we are quite at the place where we want one of these Unitree robots to look after, Granny on her own just yet. So to some extent, I mean, the big question here is are we near the iPhone moment and this is all going to take off, or is this more of a Newton, more of it looks interesting and cool and sexy, and it's just not quite ready for prime time yet. All these concerns were put aside by, as you said, the Chinese retail investors. There was a $900 million were raised on about a $9 billion valuation, so about 10% of the company was sold. They haven't floated
yet.
That's
quite a small float.
They're going to float.
Oh, okay.
10% is not uncommon. 10 to 20%, it's not uncommon. They're going to float next week. There's real revenue. Okay, so there's about $250 million, about $250 million in revenue. They're selling quite a lot of units. A lot of it is still for R&D and for experimentation, but it's growing. Gross margins are looking nice, 60%, which is very respectable for hardware. But the crazy town thing, as you said, is $900 million raised. Of that, about $200 million had been set aside for retail investors. And against those $200 million, 1.2, not billion, but trillion dollars of orders were put in. Okay. So nearly 10 million investors put in separate orders. And it sounds crazy town that you have so much
How does
so
it
much
work,
money.
Mads? I'm assuming they just don't get their allocation, right? Do they do it on a,
No,
how
of
does, how
course
does it?
not. Of course not. I mean, look, I'm sure it's delightfully opaque. They would have told their broker to get as much as they can. If anybody's been in any of these IPOs before, I mean, kind of the way it works is, you speak with your broker and it's, oh, there's an IPO coming up. You want some allocation in the IPO, and they ask how much, and you sort of try and figure out how much you want, and then you 3 or 5 or 10x that amount in the hope that you're going to get a partial allocation. So what has probably happened is everybody has been going in and saying, well, I want to buy $10,000. I'm going to put in $100,000 bid just to see if I can get, 10 or 15% of what I'm asking for.
Right. I mean, I've always figured that if China does the hardware, we can work out the software layer here and maybe circumvent some of the sovereign challenges. I don't even know if that's possible. So I'm talking out the top of my head. But where else, or what other European angles do we need to consider with this kind of, assuming there is, even if it's just on the consumer side or not maybe on so deep on the industrial side yet, what else do we need to consider here in Europe?
Well, look, European companies like Humanoid, that's based here in the UK, are trying to, if not go head to head, then certainly compete with the likes of Unitree. I think that's a very bold strategy, and I think it's a formidable competitor to be up against if you're just talking about hardware. Now, what we saw was that DeepSeek was in the IPO. They took part of the stake of the IPO, and the idea there is that they provide the software and the AI, the intelligence, to put that into the Unitree robots. Now, what can we do? I mean, look, as we always say, it's about finding real applications and finding places where you can put these things in. I probably wouldn't personally want to compete directly with Unitree on what it is they do well, but you don't buy a robot, right? You buy a solution. If you're a business, you're going to need stuff that can do things end to end. I'm not even convinced that humanoids are the right form factor for a lot of stuff that needs to happen. But B, if they are, I think you're right. You're going to want to try and figure out how can I get the cheapest possible hardware and then put my own intelligence and logic and systems and platforms on top to turn that hardware from something that's, just a, piece of kit into something that's an actual solution that solves a business problem. And
if we're looking at lots of European and American firms now taking any open source or any model and being able to tweak, convert, sovereignize, excuse the language, then that might play into the Chinese hardware solution. So we'll see how that one plays out in the real world. We also saw this week that some agents have been doing some real damage. So I think there are 3 core stories that I picked up on. One was the suspected Chinese linked hackers ran the first end-to-end autonomous cyber attack on Taiwan's government. So it's 8 agents working in parallel, working out how to infiltrate in real time, 85 accounts compromised, 2,500 staff records gone, 7 energy companies hit. So this is a bit of a big deal. And built, this is the interesting bit, built from 2 open source agent frameworks that anybody can download on the web. Number 2, we saw a supply chain breach back in March where the report has come out this week. As hackers who had poisoned software packages on the Python repository PyPy, I don't know how to say that, potentially exposing digital keys and 400,000 automated development pipelines at over 2,500 organizations worldwide. Another big deal, widespread attack. And the third one, which I think is my favorite, was an AI agent attacked a gym to get its owner access to a Pilates class, which I thought was kind of cool. I think it was in Australia. So none of the models paying attention to their safety rules, lots of hackery and naughtiness going on. What's happening on this one?
Well, I think you sort of covered what happened. I mean, I don't know how you. I guess the question is, what does it all mean? I mean,
yeah, where's it going? I think is the big question. I mean, we're obviously going to see more of this. We're obviously going to see more cat and mouse. But how do you perceive it?
The way I perceive it is that the models are incredibly powerful, and we were talking at one of the recent pods. I think Andrew, he was talking about how it sometimes feels like things have slowed down because the benchmark numbers are not increasing as fast as they once did. I mean, I'd sort of, I think another way to look at it is just, the vastness of the intelligence we have at our disposal. The the capabilities have grown in power faster than our imagination of how they can be used. You're taking some of these examples. I mean, so the gym, the hacking of the gym, it's not even a real hack, right? It's just there was a completely open system that allowed somebody to go in and cancel somebody else's booking. Fine, and
so he can get his own spot. I love it.
No, and it's great. Okay, so that needs to be patched up. I mean, clearly the two other ones are far more serious, and the staff records, the nuclear safety regulator in Taiwan, that's a biggie, right? That's a biggie. And I think the truth of it is, if somebody on the other side who was responsible for security had told, Opus or, Fable and sit down, spend half an hour to look at where the issues might be, it would probably have been patched up. But nobody did, because nobody thought about it. And people didn't think that there was the risk there is. And it's really a wake-up call, I should be, for everybody, that these models are so powerful, and get out and patch your stuff. And it's really not that hard. Like, the models are great.
Well, it's the same toolkits, right? I mean, we've said this many times. It's, AI will fix itself. I think maybe in some of the older, more stuffy, more bureaucratic organizations, some of this is going to be quite difficult to implement, is my assumption.